Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Inside of today's video, I'm going to be bringing you guys a tier list of all 46 brawlers in the game currently. So this is going to go from the very worst brawlers all the way up into the very best brawlers who want to be sticking around until the end of the video to learn who is the best in this current meta. So I've got a decent understanding of the meta. I've been playing a lot of Power League. I'm top 50 in both team and solo modes. I've been playing a lot of ladder, as you can see, 41k trophies at the moment. I've been also practicing 3 to 4 hours with my team. And also I've consulted a few top pros as well in Curse and KC. They're literally right at the top of the rankings on Power League. So before we get into today's video, make sure you're using a code. My code would be greatly appreciated, but also just any creator code in general. Just make sure you're using a creator code in the shop when you're buying all the new skins and the Brawl Pass. But yeah, without further ado, let's jump into the very worst brawlers. So starting off this ranking with the very worst brawler in the meta currently is number 46. We have Shelly. So she's been one of the worst brawlers in the meta for a very long time now. She is a starter brawler, so it's expected for her to be really bad in this meta, because if she's OP even at the later game, she's going to be even more broken for those beginners and could cause them to quit. So that is a big point as to why she's so bad. But there's also just so many better tank counters in the meta. There's probably at least 10 tank counters that just do her job much more better than her. The only really ways to buff her is by buffing her star powers or her gadgets. That should make her more viable at the late game. And her best combos are with June. But yeah, Shelly's just really not good in this meta. So coming in at number 45, we have El Primo. So just like Shelly, he's been really weak in the meta for such a long time now. His best role is to counter his fellow tanks while still being a tanky option himself. And he's never really been used in competitive for a long time now. So the best way to really buff him is just like Shelly, probably give it a little bit more love to his star powers, and he really has been suffering in a long time in this meta. It would be nice to see him get a buff. So coming in at number 44, we have Dyna, and I already know the comment section are going to be saying that Dynamite should be higher on this list, but it definitely depends on how good you are with Dynamite. He can be a good brawler if played against the right brawlers, but in terms of everyone else in the meta, they just serve a better purpose, and especially the other throwers like Barley, Tick and Sprout, they just serve a much better thrower role. They have much better range. They're also good against, well, much better against aggro brawlers like Mortis, like tanks. They can actually deal with tanks better than Dynamite. And also is a very high skill cap brawler. And it often can be too hard to consistently hit shots against those pro players, especially in competitive gameplay. You never really see Dynamite come out because it's really hard to hit those shots. Players at a high level are really good at juking those shots easily. And also Dynamite just has way too many counters, as I said. Brawlers like Mortis, erge, they can just get a free kill on Dynamite. So unfortunately, he's not going to be very good in this meta. So at number 43, we have Bull. And just like the previous metas, again, there's not really been a lot of maps that actually favor Bull. Unfortunately, maps like Pit Stop and Sandy Gems were taken out of the game, and those were definitely Bull's best maps. Literally in competitive, it was the number 1 pick in those maps. He used to absolutely destroy. They're no longer in the game, so that obviously makes Bull worst in the meta. All the other tanks as well are just better options as well, paired with Poco, or just on their own. They can just serve a better purpose than Bull. And as I said, Heist his best mode. Not really any maps for him to thrive on inside of Heist right now. And as I said, not using competitive at all, but hopefully with addition of some great maps for him, he can return back into the meta. Next up at number 42, we have Gale, and again, he really hasn't been good in the meta for a long time now. Ever since they nerfed his Spring Trap gadget, he really has sucked in the meta, but he's only really usable in game modes like Hot Zone right now, and especially on the map Parallel Plays. He's a good defensive brawler in Hot Zone. Other than that, he's not really usable in any other mode. His main purpose is to counter tanks, and again, there's just way better options to counter tanks in this meta, because all the other brawlers just basically destroy him in those one-on-one interactions. Hopefully in the future, he can get a good second gadget or a good buff to his gadget that's in the game right now, because that was when it was OP, when that Spring Trap was really good. So Gale just isn't competitively viable right now. So coming in at number 41, we have Leon, and although I still think he's pretty underrated in the meta, he might be good on ladder, but in terms of competitive gameplay, I don't think any pro player would actually even consider using Leon at the moment, which kind of tells a story as to why he's so low on this ranking. His best mode is going to be Gem Grab, and he did recently receive a buff which saw him get a little bit more usage. We've seen a few pro players trying him out a couple of months ago, but ever since the new meta has evolved, Leon's just been slowly going down the ranking, because most high skill players know how to counter him pretty easily. So I'm hoping in the future his second gadget is really good because his first gadget, let's face it, doesn't really get a lot of value. Sometimes you can get value out of it, but in comparison to all the other gadgets in the game right now, it just isn't that great. So I'm hoping Leon can be good in the future. So coming in at number 40, we have Penny. Penny is a pretty versatile brawler in this meta. She's one of these brawlers which you can basically use across every game mode, and she can serve a purpose. But unfortunately, in competitive, the role that she serves, there's just so many better brawlers there to actually do it and do a much better job. So what I'm talking about in competitives, a lot of the times it can take too long to actually get her super up. And that's obviously a big problem because you're going to be losing a lot of control. And also, even when you get that first turret up, throwers are really meta right now. So that turret can just easily get destroyed by like a Barley, like a Sprout. That's going to get taken down so easily. So as I said, there's just better options in the meta right now. Penny is in need of a good buff. So coming in at number 39 in the meta, it's going to be Brock. And after all of his buffs, he still really hasn't found a place in this meta. His main role is to actually break open the map, so use his second gadget to break open those walls and make it really good for the long range brawlers to really thrive. That's only really when we see him in competitive, is literally for his gadget. And he only obviously thrives on those longer range maps. But his shots are often too easy to dodge, so in competitive, again, a lot of pro players can easily juke these shots in comparison to other longer range brawlers, so that's why he's so low. And also, he's just really easy to take down. He's a really squishy brawler, so maybe with a HP buff, he could return to the meta. I'm hoping so, because Brock is a really fun brawler, but yeah, he just really isn't good in this meta. So coming in at number 38, we have Bo, and although he did receive some good buffs in a few balance changes ago, he still really isn't that great in the meta, especially since they nerfed his totem gadget. He really has got worse in the meta. So as I said, it's one of the worst mids in the game right now. He only really thrives in bounty, and especially on the map Snake Prairie. He's like the golden pick there. Other than that, he's not really good across all of the other modes. I'm hoping in the future to get him increased in viability in the meta, they actually remove his totem gadget, because then it will remove the cheesy nanny strategy where you just camp in spawn with that totem. Hopefully remove that or rework that gadget, and then hopefully we can get some good buffs to him in other areas, and then finally he can become a meta again. So coming in at number 37, we have Edgar, and although he's really good in Showdown right now, this is a 3v3 competitive tier list ranking, so unfortunately he's not going to be good in the 3v3 meta. So Edgar is of course so good in those 1v1 interactions, but it's actually extremely hard to cycle his super, especially since they nerfed him in the last few balance changes. He's been slowly getting nerfs, and he's just not great right now. So Edgar relies too much on his super. Once those gadgets are used up, it can be really hard to actually get his super again. And as you guys know, he's got one of the shortest ranges in the game, if not the shortest. And without his super, it's just going to be so easy to take down. He's really squishy, so he's not going to be winning those 1v1 engagements without his super. He's best against throwers. That's when you see him used most in competitive, is when throwers are really like dominant on those certain maps. Edgar can be a good counter, but other than that, Edgar really struggles in competitive. So next up at number 36, we have Colt, and I think Colt is really balanced in this meta. So Colt has slowly been getting worse since his big nerf to his silver bullet gadget all the way probably like 4 months ago now, but he's slowly been getting worse in the meta. He's still pretty viable on most heist maps right now because of his gadget. He actually breaks up really important walls, making it easier for you to actually get out of spawn. So a good example of this is actually GG Mortuary in competitive. Colt is like the golden pick on that map. Also can be a good surprise pick on a lot of different maps, because with his gadget, just like Brock, he can break open those crucial walls, opening up the map for the longer range brawlers to really thrive. So sometimes in competitive, you see him picked to counter those tankier comps, to poker double tank comps. Colt can open up the walls, making it easier to actually find and destroy those tankier brawlers. And also his best modes are going to be heist and hot zone. We've seen him a lot in competitive hot zone right now, which may be a big surprise to some people, but honestly, he's a really solid pick and he's pretty balanced in this meta. So coming in at number 35 on the list is going to be Ems. So with less Mr. P in this meta, which was a really big hard counter to Ems, we're slowly seeing Ems become more of a solid pick as the meta evolves. So especially on Brawl, Ems is going to be really good. You've seen a lot of pro teams actually pick Ems just in case the other team might run like a poker double tank comp, because Ems can literally single-handedly deal with poker double tank. Her super is so good for zoning and just completely melting them. inside of her super. She's also pretty good just at holding her lane, just because of her shot is just really good at zoning. Unfortunately, Em's gadget is still pretty trash. Hopefully we'll see either a buff to that gadget or a new second gadget that can be really OP, which would increase her viability. But also she pairs really well with Max in the meta. I'm seeing a lot of times in competitive, a lot of Max and Ems. That's why we're seeing a lot of her in Brawl. And hopefully as the meta develops, we'll be seeing a lot more of her. So next up at number 34, we have Rico. Rico is only decent in this meta. A few metas ago, at the beginning of this year, there was loads of maps on ladder which favored him so much, hence why it was so good. The amount of walls, being able to bounce them in and around, just really good for those choke points. But unfortunately in this meta, he's not really the best. He's only good on a few select maps like Hard Rock Mine, like Hot Potato, but he really does excel on those maps because of those walls. He can just cover so much of the area with those bounces. But he's a really balanced brawler. I don't think much really needs to change about him. Maybe give him a little bit more damage or something like that if you want to make him OP. But as I said, he's a really good spot in the meta right now. His best modes are Gem Grab, Brawl, and Heist. Rico is just solid overall. So next up at number 33, we have Mr. P. So Mr. P used to be a top 5 brawler for such a long time in the meta. And I'm going to go ahead and say it's a bit controversial to put him this low. But I honestly think Mr. P is so overrated in this meta. I'm still seeing people pick him like first pick in Power League. And a lot of people trying to play him in Power League as well. I just think, as I said, he's pretty overrated. So at the moment, it's not really used in competitive right now. His second gadget got a heavy nerf, and it's nowhere near as good. It's been literally nerfed so that every single brawler near enough can one-shot that porter, and it's going to get no value. The porter can't even get a shot off before it's destroyed, so that's hence why it's so useless right now. And as I said, it might be controversial to put him so low, but honestly, after playing against him and playing with him, he really does struggle in this meta. There's a lot of Poco, there's a lot of Sandy. Other brawlers are just stronger than him at the moment. And even Mr. P, he can counter brawlers like Jean and B. I still don't feel like he counters them that well. You've seen a lot more Jean in this meta, a lot more B, as Mr. P isn't that good. So overall, Mr. P can still be pretty versatile. You can use him across a lot of different modes and maps. You're going to have a decent success rate. But I just think there's better choices than him in this meta. So coming in at number 32, we have Spike. Spike is a super versatile option in this current meta. A lot of times on ladder, if you're in doubt down a lane, you could just use Curveball Spike. He's pretty good ever since he got a buff in the last set of balance changes. Reverting that reload speed was really good for him. So he's going to be good mostly across Brawl and Gem Grab. As I said, it's really nice seeing him better in the meta, but still in Power League and scrims, I don't really see Spike being used at all. And the main problem for this is that he's super squishy. He can just get taken down so easily by the amount of Sandys in the meta. There's a lot of Barley in the meta, and Spike just really does suffer against those brawlers. But as I said, overall, in terms of ladder, he's decent, but in competitive, he's very rarely used. So next up at number 31, we have BB. So she recently got a nerf, a 10% nerf to her batting stance star power, which saw her decrease in viability in the meta only a little bit, because a lot of the other tanks are just a little bit better. But overall, she's still going to be really good in Siege with their home run at star power. She could be a really nuisance to the thrower brawlers like Tick, Barley and Sprout, who are really good in Siege right now. And even though I've placed her really low on the rankings, I still think she's a solid option in the meta, but it's very comp specific a lot of the times. But I feel like this is the most balanced BB has ever been. So next up at number 30, we have Tara, and Tara is slowly seeing a lot more playtime in competitive right now, especially on Gem Grab and Brawl. They're the two modes that she's always been good on, but slowly as time goes on, Tara is actually getting a lot more usage, especially on maps like Sneaky Fields and Ice Fort. Tara is actually used a lot there. So the main reason for this one is I'm seeing a lot more usage out of her second gadget. Her gadget can be really annoying, especially against those single shot brawlers like Jean, Piper and B. We've seen a lot more of those brawlers in this meta, so that can be a really good counter, pushing them all the way back because it takes so long to actually take down those little minions. But Tara is really underrated right now. Whenever I see him being played, she actually has a really high win rate, and also she's a golden pick in Snake Prairie, so that's one of the competitive maps, bringing her up in viability. So she's going to be really balanced in this meta. Okay guys, so moving on to number 29, we have Daryl, and I've always said this, but Daryl is consistently been proven to be one of the most underrated brawlers in every single meta. He's honestly getting a lot of playtime right now in competitive, in Brawl and Heist. The main reason for this is because of all the tanks he can deal with his control brawlers really well. So these brawlers are going to be like Sandy, Carl, Surge, Amber. We're seeing a lot of usage out of those brawlers in the meta right now, and Daryl is a fantastic counter to those, because if you time your roll correctly, you can easily just knock them back and just destroy them once you land on top of them. He's honestly such a good hybrid for those Poco double tank combinations. And as I said, Poco's just running wild right now, especially in Brawl Ball. He's so good in this meta, so tanks are going to be even better. Hence why Daryl is going to be so good. But as I said, got to make sure you land in that role, and Daryl can be an amazing brawler. So coming in at number 28, we have Jackie, and Jackie is a solid option right now in Hot Zone and Brawl Ball, and just overall on most modes. So both star powers for Jackie are actually pretty viable, especially since the change to Counter Crusher. We're seeing a lot of Counter Crusher and Hardy Hard Hat. It just depends kind of how you feel about both star powers. As I said, both really viable. Jackie, of course, pairs really well with Poco. We're seeing a lot of Poco right now. All tanks are going to be even better in this meta because of how good Poco is. But a lot of times with Jackie, the best thing about her is that she can just instantly punish a lot of those squishier brawlers with just a couple of quick attacks, especially through walls as well. It's just really good for Jackie right now. She's also got a gadget to close the gap on those brawlers and just destroy. And as I said before, the biggest probably counter for me is Sandy. Jackie's an amazing counter to Sandy. Sandy is so prevalent in this meta, so that is why Jackie is so good. So next up at number 27, we have Frank, and Frank recently actually got some balance changes. He got 3% buff to his damage, just making him that little bit stronger. And also in a Poco meta, Frank is also going to be always one of the best tanks, because he can deal with enemy tanks so well, especially with his super. He basically hold counters most tanks other than El Primo, but he can also take down those squishy brawlers with his extended range of the super, especially brawlers like Spike, for example. He can two-shot them with ease. A lot of his brawlers he can one or two tap quite easily, and his best modes are going to be Brawl Ball and a Hot Zone, because with Poco just dominates on those modes. Frank is really solid on this meta. So next up at number 26, we have Anita. Anita's a really solid option in this meta. She's only really used competitively in Brawl Ball right now, but as I said, she's just a solid option. She's a really good hybrid brawler. By this, I mean that she can deal with tanks really well, and also the control combos really well. So this means that she's not really countered by many brawlers in the game right now, which just makes her a solid option down the lane. She can basically hold her own against most brawlers in the game, and that's going to be why she's so good. You see a lot of teams just use her because they're afraid of those Poco comps. They're afraid of a bunch of other things. So Anita's just really a good option there. But as I said, just a balanced brawler overall. Coming in at number 25, we have Piper. And with less Mr. P in the meta, we're slowly seeing Piper return. So beforehand, Mr. P in the meta was just so prevalent. You couldn't really risk using Piper because that gadget just used to absolutely destroy her. But now, as I said, we've seen a lot more of her being used in Bounty, for example. Piper is a bounty brawler, and with Mr. P before, you couldn't really use Piper, but now she's slowly returning to this meta. She's an amazing option on those longer range maps. Literally just so many maps across so many different modes where Piper can actually be used, like Heist, for example, on Kaboom Canyon, or on Siege for bot drop. On those longer range maps, Piper can do so well. So best modes right now, as I said, are going to be Bounty and Gem Grab. Just going to be a good mid overall and just solid option on Bounty. As I said, viable on every single long range map. So coming in at number 24, we have Rosa. Rosa is still a solid option in this meta because her second gadget is so strong, especially on those grassy maps like Snake Prairie, like Sneaky Fields, like Hard Rock Mine. You're still seeing a lot of Rosa in play. So that second gadget is going to be so crucial in getting kills and confirming them. You can slow enemies down in bushes and basically, as I said, get that kill. She's always used in Poco comps and also with the Max Sandy combination. You've seen so much in competitive right now, the Max Sandy combination. Essentially, this combination is so good because you can speed up a Rosa, and especially if that Rosa's got her super, there's basically no brawler that's going to be able to stop her. A Rosa with super is such a scary thing. But the main reason why she's actually fallen in the meta for me is before there was a lot of Mr. P in the meta. As speeded up Rosa would just absolutely destroy a Mr. P. There's not much Mr. P in the meta now, so Rosa has decreased in viability, sadly. And also we're seeing a lot more Jean in the meta, and Jean just completely wrecks Rosa. So that's why you're seeing Rosa a little bit further down on the ranking. So at 23 on the list, we have Nani. Nani basically is the best brawler in Bounty right now, especially with her return to sender gadget. This can be a cheat code to death because the damage reflected is 80%. It's basically an 80% shield, and also return that straight back to the enemy. It can be so OP, especially on maps like Shooting Star. It basically makes Nani untouchable, but she's a really good option in Gem Grab and Brubble as well on those open maps. She can counter the longer range brawlers like Byron, like Piper, like Brock. She basically just destroys them. She's really good at destroying those squishy brawlers with her super as well. She's just a solid option overall. So next up at number 22, we have Lou. And Lou's been one of the worst brawlers in the game for a long time now, but these buffs have really pushed him back into the meta. So Lou is really underrated still. I don't see many teams actually using him in competitive, but honestly, when I've been using him in scrims and in Power League and all those other stuff, he is really underrated and really good. His damage is actually so good. A lot of times he can just melt through tanks, melt through those control brawlers. It honestly is an underrated pick. And when you combine this with his super and also the freeze change, it's changed from 1 second to 1.5 second. It just creates chaos. It honestly does. His best modes are by far Siege and Hot Zone right now, because he can get those solo defenses on Siege, Hot Zone. That super can basically just control the whole zone. It's crazy. But also, he was picked a lot in the LATAM monthly finals, just showing how good he is in competitive right now. Lou seriously is OP. So at number 21, we have Mortis. And Mortis is one of the highest skill cap brawlers in the game right now, but it also can be so devastating when used correctly, as you've probably seen with Linane, with YDE, with all these good Mortis players in competitive. It can be so devastating. It can just lead to chaos on the map. So his best modes are going to be Gem Grab, Brubble, and Hot Zone. We're seeing a lot of usage of Mortis right now. The main reason why is because he can just destroy those squishy brawlers. He counters brawlers like Sandy, Sprout, and Barley so well. We're seeing all these brawlers so high up on the meta ranking, hence why Mortis is high up. But if Mortis is used correctly, he can do so much damage on the field. So next up at number 20, we have B. Poco Double Tank is really good right now, and B is one of the best brawlers to deal with this because she's constantly got her 3k shots. She's got a really good super which allows her to slow all the enemies and catch them off guard. So Mr. P is bad in this meta as well, and it's common trend for B to do well when Mr. P isn't meta, and vice versa. So if Mr. P is really good in the meta, B is really bad as well. So she's a really good option on those longer range maps, and you've seen it a lot of times in competitive right now, combined with those good wall break brawlers like a Brock or a Colt. So what they'll do, they'll break open the map with their gadget, and B is just really insane once the map is opened up, because if you've got a good B on your team, you can consistently hit those 3k shots and deal so much damage. So inside of Brubble and Hot Zone, we're seeing this a lot in competitive right now, hence why B is so high up on the meta. So coming in at number 19, we have Carl, and although Carl, I did say a few days ago, was really OP in this meta, the next 19 brawlers honestly are so good. And that's why I think the meta is looking really nice at the moment. So even with Cole being number 19, as I said, he's really versatile. And that's the best thing about him. You can pretty much use him on every single mode and pretty much on every single map, depending on the comp as well. So he can be used on every mode. But as I said, he's a solid option. A lot of times we can just use Cole. If we're unsure on what to go, we could just use Cole because he's pretty much good against everything right now. In Siege, he can easily secure the first bolt. With that gadget, you can basically just fling yourself across the map, secure that first bolt, and that's super important in Siege a lot of the times. In Brubbles, he can score really quick goals. With that gadget, he can just score some amazing fast goals. He can also counter throwers really well. That's why I enjoy him the most in this meta. And also Gem Grab, he's just really good. So Cole is just a solid option everywhere right now. So coming in at number 18 on the list, we have Jessie. And Jessie used to be one of the best brawlers in the game. She still pretty much is, but she's slowly been going down the rankings after she's been getting some nerfs. But she's still a good mid in this meta. The best thing about Jessie is going to be her spark plug gadget. I still to this day see people choose the other gadget instead of this one. I'm not too sure why, but the spark plug gadget is probably the best gadget in the game, if not one of the best. It effectively makes it so when you get your turret, you can just throw it on the enemy and stun multiple people, and you can just confirm kills so much easier with this gadget. The slow effect is so underrated, and the modes she's used best in are Brubble, Hot Zone, and sometimes on Heist and Siege too. She just destroys tanky comps, the heal comps as well. We actually see a few of the top teams actually ban Jessie because of the typical comps she can actually counter. A lot of times you can just use her as a hybrid. You can honestly even use her on lane on some maps and on some strategies. She's a really good option in this meta. So coming in at number 17, we have Crow, and Crow has finally made his mark in the meta, and especially on the maps that are really open like Kaboom Canyon and Backyard Bowling competitive. Crow is literally used everywhere. So the main reason for this is because of his slow toxin gadget. It slows enemies for 5 seconds, which is such a long time. It allows you enough time to actually take them down. As a team, it's so easy to actually confirm a kill when they're so slow. Crow is also a really good counter to a lot of heal combinations with his healing debuff, which he recently got, and also can be a good counter to throwers. So he's got basically everything because he can counter throwers with his jump. It does take a little bit of a while to actually get the jump, but once you do get it, you can just literally destroy them, jump straight on top of them, nothing they can do. Crow is a really solid option in this meta. Coming in at number 16, we have Surge, and Surge has had a resurgence in the meta. So his damage has been buffed with the last set of balance changes, and that's really helped him a lot to become strong again, because in my last tier list, he actually was near the bottom, but now he's working his way back up. So Surge is an amazing counter to a lot of his squishy brawlers. You do recognize a lot of time that Surge can literally 2 or 3 shot a lot of these brawlers with his gadget. He can TP onto them and just destroy them, so he's really good in that case. Surge is a really good counter to a lot of different combos, and also his best modes are Brawl and Hot Zone. You've seen him a lot used in Brawl and Hot Zone because he can literally just make good use of his gadget. Surge is finally good again in the meta. So next up at number 15, we have Pam, and Pam is a really solid option in the meta right now. She can pretty much deal with every single brawler in the game. So Pam has a really good range, a lot of damage. Her turret can be really versatile because not only does it heal, but also with the Mama Squeeze star power, it can deal up to 800 damage per second. And honestly, this is really underrated. This can help her confirm kills so much more easily. The best maps for her are going to be the more open ones, so the ones like Bot Drop, like Kaboom Canyon. She's going to be really good there, and she's pretty much good across a lot of different modes because she's a really beefy character. She has a lot of HP, she has a lot of damage. She can just serve multiple purposes in this meta. She's really solid. So next up at number 14, we have Tick. Tick is still very dominant in the meta, even after his recent damage nerf. His range got increased a few balance changes ago, and ever since he's became an even more annoying brawler, especially on maps like Shooting Star. He can just cover so many different choke points with the amount of range he's got. Tick is also really great at dealing with those aggressive brawlers. You might not really think it, but especially the fact that he can cycle his heads so quickly, and also with his gadget, his last hurrah gadget, just basically makes him invincible to those aggressive brawlers like Mortis. Before, Mortis could just destroy Tick. Now with his gadget, he can just easily deal with those aggressive brawlers, making Tick a really strong brawler in the meta. So next up at number 13, we have Claire, and Claire is currently the best tank counter in Brawl Stars and can be really good on a variety of maps and modes. You can also use Claire in one of 2 ways. So the first way you can use her is with her push it style power. You can just basically use her lane by herself and just hit a brawler with 2 shots and then super them, and you're going to kill them instantly. So this is why she can be really good, especially in gem grab. A lot of people use that star power. And then you've got the other star power, mass tax, which basically every single time Claire supers, she actually gets a shield, and the more people she hits, the more damage reduction she has on that shield. So this can be paired really well with healers like Poco or Byron, and it's just amazing on game modes like Heist and Siege. You see this used so often. Honestly, Claire is so good in this meta, especially combined with certain brawlers. She's an absolute killing machine. So next up at number 12, we have Amber, and even with her recent nerfs, Amber's still really good in the meta, and although she's fallen a few places in the rankings, she's still pretty much usable on every single map and mode except for bounties. So her mechanics are naturally really strong, with the ability to auto aim and lock onto enemies without them even being able to juke the shots. Just means that overall this mechanic's pretty broken in the meta. Her Wild Flame star power actually is super OP as well, because it can help cover multiple choke points, especially if you're just sitting at that super. You get basically another free super, and a lot of these times enemies will have to run into that fire and then just be set alight, and it just makes it really easier to confirm kills. Honestly, Amber is still a force to be reckoned with. So next up at number 11, we have my boy Gene, and he's finally returned to the meta, and the main reason for this is because Mr. P isn't meta before. Mr. P just used to completely hard counter Gene. There's nothing Gene can really do when Mr. P is so strong, especially with that new gadget as well. Gene just has such a slow reload speed, but the main thing about him as well in this meta, that Gene Max combination will always be good, but it's even stronger. It's probably the #1 pick across many pro players. It's just so good because basically Max can give you speed. Once you get that Jean pull, you basically just get a free pull onto every single enemy. There's nothing that they can really do unless they've got a max speed to respond to yours. The big downside to Jean is that, as I said, it takes 4 direct hits to get his super. However, if you consistently hit pulls, it's still going to be really good for him. And Jean is pretty much a counter to most brawlers in the game when synergized with the right combinations. And Magic Puffs also really helps in those 1v1 tight engagements. Jean is finally good again. So now moving it on to the top 10, and starting off at number 10, we have Ruff. So Ruff's got some heavy nerfs with the last balance changes, which greatly impacted his ability to win a lot of 1v1 interactions. But however, his super is still so strong. The ability to give him and his teammates some extra HP and damage can really help in those 1v1 engagements. Ruff's is pretty much usable on every single mode if used with the right combinations. His playstyle with his team is pretty much to keep control, stay alive, keep the upgrades, and you're just going to be continuously winning those 1v1s and then winning the game. The biggest downside is that there's a lot of brawlers that actually can easily beat him down the lane. As I said, those nerfs really did impact him in those 1v1s, but Ruff's still is really good in this meta. So next up, coming up at number 9, we have 8-Bit. And 8-Bit somehow has survived another set of balance changes without a nerf, and it continues to dominate the gem grab meta. His plugged in star power makes him so strong, making it so hard for the enemy team actually to take him down, because he's got so much range, a lot of damage. He's really fast as well. He basically is a complete package when it comes in terms of gem grab. His 50% damage boost can really help him and his teammates play a passive playstyle and basically win all of their engagements. A lot of times you'll see brawlers like a Sprout or a Mr. P just basically sit in that 8-Bit turret, and they can deal so much damage that the enemy teams can't even push. No matter how aggro they go, they're just basically going to get destroyed. So 8-Bit is still so strong on those long range maps and can be used on a variety of different game modes. He still is so OP. So next up at number 8, we have Sandy in the meta. So Sandy is a top pick amongst pro players because it's not really one of these brawlers that gets banned a lot in Power League or in terms of competitive gameplay. So he is a really highly picked brawler in this meta. So he can be used pretty much in every single mode and map except for Heist and Bounty. There's probably his 2 weakest modes. Sandy synergizes so well with so many different brawler and compositions. The main compositions which he's used in are Max, Jean, and Sandy, and also the Max, Sandy, Rosa combinations. You see this a lot in competitive right now. Ever since the buff, which seen Sandy actually charge his super to 5 hits now, just basically makes it so much easier to cycle his super. And his super has such a large radius, it can force the enemy team back, ultimately leading to you gaining control. And it can just be basically a domino effect if you keep cycling your super, keep getting control. So Sandy is so OP in this meta. So next up at number 7, we have Byron, and even after several nerfs, every single balance change, he still is a very top pick in the competitive meta. His best maps are the open maps, as his shots are so easily to consistently hit, whether it's on your teammates or on the enemies. So he has an amazing synergy with basically every single brawler in the game, because he can basically help the teammates win the lane with just a few shots, healing them up, thus leading to some easy lane control. His overall mechanics are just so strong. He has several forms of healing and he's used pretty much on every single game mode. So next at number 6, we have Poco. Poco is absolutely insane with the recent balance changes. So Poco has flooded the meta ever since the last balance changes, which saw his super charge rate go from 5 hits to 4 hits. It's just really crazy how quick he can get his super now. Poco is fundamental to a lot of tank synergies. With how good Poco is, it allows tanks to actually be even better in a meta. Poco is pretty much usable everywhere with most comps. However, his best modes are Brawl, Gem Grab, Hot Zone, and Bounty. Poco is now even viable as a mid on his own. I've seen a lot of times scrims and tournaments where people are actually using Screeching solo without tanks on their team, and they can just basically cycle their super so often over and over again, and it basically makes Poco a killing machine with how often he gets his super. Poco really is an amazing brawler in this meta. So now moving into the top 5 in the current meta, we're starting off number 5 with Max. Max continues to be perhaps the best pick for pros in this current meta. It allows for so many different brawler synergies. Max really doesn't have many counters in this meta, as her synergies make it so you can basically always find a way to actually win. Her ability to cycle supers so fast with her supercharged star power makes it so hard for the enemy team to actually hit you and your teammates, because obviously you're going really fast, so enemies are going to struggle to consistently hit you, and that makes it so easy to actually get some pressure, get control of the map, and just dominate no matter what mode you're actually on. Max is dominant across every mode, as I said, and she's for sure a very, very strong brawler in this meta. So now coming in at number 4, we have Sprout, and even after he got 2 nerfs, he's still so good in this meta. Sprout has a higher skill cap than most brawlers in the game because his shots are actually really hard to consistently hit over and over again, but when brawlers are really close to him, he can struggle, so they're going to be the biggest counters to him for sure. His ability to constantly zone out enemies with his wall can force enemies into smaller choke points, allowing you and your team to just dictate the map and however you really want it, basically. So Sprout counters squishy brawlers, but of course gets hard countered by those really tanky aggro brawlers, because as I said, it's so hard to actually hit a brawler when they're on top of you, so that's the biggest weakness for Sprout for sure. But Sprout dominates gem grab, bounty, siege, and hot zone meta. He's still such an OP brawler. So now moving on to the top 3 in the meta. At number 3, we have Belle. So Belle is a new brawler in the meta, and although it can be really hard to get good data on where she truly lies in the meta, from playing with her and against her on ladder and on Power League, she truly is an insane brawler in this meta. Her range is longer than Piper's, but at the same time you can easily still use her on those small close range maps, because she can basically be a shotgunner at close range as well. She just makes her an insane hybrid brawler. Her ability to counter those compositions that really rely on your team to group up is crazy. So like the Gene Max combinations, the Ruffs combinations that you see a lot of the time when people use Sandy supers, Poco double tank, etc, etc. Just the ability to literally infinitely just bounce off enemies over and over again. Also hitting other targets like the high safe, like the Ike. It can be such an OP mechanic in Brawl Stars. Honestly, you can get some insane value, as I mentioned. Belle is a crazy OP brawler. So coming in at the second best brawler currently in Brawl Stars, it's going to be Barley. Barley has got 2 huge buffs, and this has basically made him literally broken in the meta. In the last update, they gave him an insane range buff and a crazy amount of damage, especially when you use his damage style power. It can be so overwhelming for the enemy team. So Barley was already a top 15 brawler in the meta and had his spotlight on game modes like Siege and Brawl. He was still pretty much dominant on those game modes, but the extra range has essentially made him a thrower sniper. He can literally snipe people across the map behind walls. It's kind of crazy, and it can literally lead to some cases him 1v3ing on certain maps because the enemy literally can't have any control on the map. So good examples of this are like triple dribble. He can literally win 3 lanes at once with his range. It's insane. He has literally 2 really versatile gadgets which can virtually deal with all sorts of brawlers. He can counter tanks with his slow gadget. He can give insane control with his heal gadget. It really is such a good brawler. Barley is usable pretty much on every single map and mode at the moment if used smartly. He's so broken in this meta. So now moving on to the best brawler currently in Brawl Stars, and I feel like there's no really proper competition for this one. It was an easy choice. It is Stu. So Stu, even after the recent nerfs to his HP and his damage, he still continues to cause mayhem on the map. His ability to effectively win every single 1v1 interaction in the game is crazy. He gets his super with just 1 hit, and that's all he needs to punish so many different brawlers in this game. So the strongest thing about him is that he actually knockbacks people every single time he supers into them. So with every dash he hits, he stuns them and basically rendering them hopeless as he cycles his supers so fast, basically over and over again, just keep knocking back the enemies and basically not going to be able to even shoot back in some cases. So Stu can pretty much be used in every single comp, every single map, and every situation. You can use Stu. That's why he's the most banned brawler for sure in competitive, in Power League. Literally every single game mode I play, he is banned. So yeah, Stu is crazy OP in this meta, and I feel like there's no competition around it. Alright guys, this is going to be the end of today's video. Apologies for it being so long, but I put so much effort into this, so I'd appreciate if you liked and commented. Let me know what you think of my tier list in the comment section below. As I do say a lot of the times, this is going to be at the high end of ladder, at the high end of Power League and competitive. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about these rankings, because it may differ from where you're at in trophies. So like the 500 trophy range, that may be a little bit different. But as I said, let me know what you think in the comment section below. But I really do appreciate all you guys' support recently. It's really helps me with my grind. So that's going to be it for today's video. Make sure you're like, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you guys next time.